ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन् इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So here we see Lord Kapila is further describing about the process of Astanga Yoga. We saw he started with Shuchau Deshe Pratisthapya. So we see Astanga Yoga has 8 different limbs: Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama. These are the first 4. So in Yama and Niyama, like we saw, one has to strictly observe many rules and regulations like celibacy. Then he has to perform austerities. So observing all these different rules and regulations, one should go to a secluded place, sacred place, and then start asana. After following the different rules and regulations, the mind and senses, they come to a certain stage of control, which makes the overall environment conducive for practicing Ashtanga Yoga. Then sitting postures are practiced. So I'll read that little part. After controlling one's mind and sitting posture, one should spread a seat in secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in easy posture, Sukhasina, Swasti Samasina, keeping his body erect and practice breath control. So after practicing the different asanas, one should sit in Swasti Samasina, easy posture, and then practice breath control. Then we saw Lord Kapila describing about how one has to inhale, one has to exhale, all that process. And he explained why that is being done, what is the reason. So he said, Yatha sthiram achanchalam pratikulena vachittam. This is done so that mind may become steady. So this pranayama was done, and all these asanas, everything, whatever was done, yama, niyama, to what stage it will bring? This is done so that mind may become steady, sthira, and free from external disturbances. Why mind is required to be free from external disturbances? Because now the mind has to be taken inside. one will gradually start fixing his mind on the form of the Lord within the heart. So, now the environment is being made conducive so that mind is free from external disturbances. That was the reason. And so in today's verse, in the previous to that it was said, yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from mental disturbances. So that pranayama, it helps to control the mind and get it freed from mental disturbances. And the example was given, just as gold when put into fire and fanned with air becomes free from impurities. So that was the goal. So today in this verse, Lord Kapila is describing these 4 different angas, the 4 different limbs, and what happens. So with pranayama we find mental disturbances were controlled. Mind will no longer be agitated, disturbed by external circumstances, correct? So further now Lord Kapila is describing. So he is saying, pranayamaihi dahed doshan. It will make the body also conducive for concentrating on the Supreme Lord. Because, see, externally there may be disturbance, you have controlled your mind. Your mind is not going to external disturbances. But if there is disturbance in your body, suppose you are having a disease in your body, your stomach is aching, you are having indigestion, then where mind will be disturbed? So mind will not be in a position to be fixed on the Supreme Lord. So Lord Kapila is saying that by doing pranayama, one will be able to eradicate the 3 doshas. These 3, kapha, pitta and vayu, their balance in the body is very important. If kapha increases too much, or if pitta increases too much, vata increases too much, then any of them will create a problem. Just like if vata is too much, you will have a lot of gastric problems. If you have kapha, then that is very easy to make out. Your all nadis will be closed because of mucus. And pitta will have acidity and so many other different kinds of problems. So there has to be a proper balance of these 3 different elements in the body. So Lord Kapila is saying that by practicing pranayama, mind will be freed not only from external disturbances, the body will be freed from the disturbances created by these 3 doshas, so that the mind will not be diverted to the different disease which will distract the mind. So that is what Lord Kapila is saying. And then dharana bhischakil bishan. When one is concentrating his mind, dharana, that will help to eradicate the sinful activities. Pratyaharena samsargan. When you learn to withdraw your senses from sense objects, it will gradually free you from material association, samsargan. We are bound in this material world because of our material association. So pratyahara, restraining the senses to go and run towards sense object, will help us to get free from material association. But of course that is not enough. That helps, but that is not enough. Just taking out the senses from sense object, but not employing the senses properly, where the senses can be fixed. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Until that is done, still disturbances will continue. Still you will not be able to be free from material association. Again, one may fall back to material association. And then it is said, Dhyanena Anishwaran Gunan, and by fixing one's mind. And what is the meaning of Dhyanena? It is explained. Dhyana avasthita tadgatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginaha. Dhyana means to fix one's mind on the Supreme Lord. That is actually beginning of spiritual process. Till now, it's all mechanical, different. Pranayama, pratyahara, all these are part of mechanical processes. This is the beginning of spiritual process. When one is fixing his mind, all others were meant to bring the mind to a certain stage, to bring the senses to a certain stage, to make it conducive to the mind on the Supreme Lord. Now the process begins that one can concentrate his mind, fix his mind on the Supreme Lord. And that is where one will become free from three modes of material nature. In all other processes, it is not said by practicing pranayama one will become free. One can become free from the disturbance created by the three doshas. One can concentrate, one can, become free from disturbance of external objects to the mind. All those things can be done. But still the soul has not become free from the influence of three modes. This starts when one starts fixing his mind on the Supreme Lord, dhyana, at that point. So, now Prabhupada is pointing something very interesting, very important. Prabhupada is saying, ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. This is the ultimate goal. That in order to be situated on transcendental platform, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he can become free from three modes of material nature. Now, Prabhupada brings a very important point. So now Lord Kapila has already described yama, niyama, celibacy, all these different rules, regulation one needs to follow. Asana, where he should, in a sacred place, he should place an asana. And easy posture he should sit, and then he should practice breathing exercises in order to gradually and pratyahara withdraw his mind from external sense object, and then he should start dhyana, fixing his mind on the Supreme Lord. And then Lord Kapila is saying, then he will become free from the influence of three modes of material nature. Now, Prabhupada points out that Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says that there is parallel to what is achieved by practicing yoga can also be achieved in a very simple way by practicing Bhakti Yoga. So, here when Lord Kapila is saying that one will become free from the three modes of material nature by concentrating, by fixing his mind, dhyana, on the Supreme Lord, which is the verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, Mam chayo avya vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan sammaitetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. When Arjuna asked this question, when Krishna has described about three modes of material nature, how they affect us. So how to get out of these three modes of material nature? Krishna says, Avya vicharena bhakti yogena yo sevate. Anyone who practices unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Lord immediately comes to transcendental platform. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate, sagunan sammaitetan. Immediately comes out of the modes of three modes of material nature and gets situated on transcendental platform. So now you can compare. Prabhupada is saying, this is very interesting, Prabhupada is comparing this. Throughout Bhagavad Gita, if you read in the 6th chapter, now sometimes we may wonder why in Dhyana Yoga chapter Prabhupada is talking Bhakti, 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 Bhakti. Isn't it? You'll find this. In where Prabhupada is saying, just like when Krishna was describing about celibacy to be practiced in Astanga Yoga. So Prabhupada compares there also, brings a parallel activity. Prabhupada says, in Astanga Yoga, full brahmachari only can be accepted. Bhakti Yoga, it is simplified. You can be a grahastha brahmachari and you can still be admitted and you can get the same result. Correct? When in Path of Perfection, Prabhupada talks about, in Ashtanga Yoga, one practices asana. And in devotional service, we practice chanting the holy name and dancing. So that is also a parallel activity. They go and sit down somewhere and practice some asanas. We go to the temple and we practice dancing and chanting the holy name of the Lord. So that is also parallel. So yama is there, niyama is there. We also follow the different rules and regulations. Everything is there. Isn't it? And automatically all our diseases, everything can be, if we regulate our eating, if we regulate our sleeping, all those things. Isn't it? So practically we can see that in all those chapters, in all the purports, nearly the first half Prabhupada describes about that practice which Krishna mentions, and later in that purport Prabhupada describes about how same thing can be achieved by Krishna consciousness. Because even though Dhyana Yoga is an authorized process, for this age, it is not practical. For this age, this is not the Yuga Dharma. It cannot be practiced by common people. Maybe very few. But it is not, it cannot, and that very few also is very difficult. We don't find practically. Even Ashtanga Yoga, where are they following yama? Where are they following niyama? Where are they following the principles that complete celibacy? Where are they following the principle that shuchau deshe, they should go to very, very sacred and secluded place? We find only yoga societies. So where are they following? Only two of them we find they are following. Asana and pranayama. You see. Not more than that. So this is not very practical in the age of Kali. So Prabhupada is saying, it is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Sagunan sammaitetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti Yoga. So what we find Lord Kapila describing here, that by fixing your mind, dhyana, on the Supreme Lord, one will become free from three modes of material nature. Krishna also describes in Bhagavad Gita that yes, by unalloyed devotional service you will achieve that result. So parallel activity is there. It is not concocted by Prabhupada. It is there. Isn't it? And why Prabhupada is emphasizing that is because that is practical for Kali Yuga. So that Prabhupada is stating next. Prabhupada is saying, but practice of Bhakti Yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti Yoga is feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti Yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead. One is practical, others are difficult. So this is the reason Prabhupada is emphasizing that what is the use of something which cannot be practiced in this age, even though it may be bona fide, isn't it? One has to purify his, so what happens here? Physiological condition and then concentration by restraint of senses, then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is called as Samadhi. So the same thing we find is achievable by the practice of Bhakti Yoga. So Lord Chaitanya, that is how we find that even though there are processes, jnana, karma and yoga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally showed by his own example that even though he was very learned in the Vedanta, he says the age of Kali Yuga, one cannot understand the gist of Vedanta simply by his scholarship. And he showed by the example that when he approached his spiritual master told him that you cannot understand Vedanta, so you don't try to read Vedanta. You just practice the essence of Vedanta for this age of Kali Yuga. And he gave him this verse, Harer Nam, Harer Nam, Harer Nam eva kevalam. He told him that the Vedic scriptures are stressing, Kalau nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyatha. There is no other way, no other way, no other way. So you simply practice this. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that I started practicing this. And so when he was practicing, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found a lot of change in his consciousness. He found that he was completely becoming so much attracted to this chanting of the holy name that he lost all kinds of his mind going to externals completely. So he said, my dear spiritual master, what kind of mantra have you given me? Chanting, I have become mad after chanting. I simply go on chanting more and more. And I lose all consciousness of whatever is there in the external. So his spiritual master said, well done, it is very good. That is the nature of chanting the holy name of the Lord. And he said, not only you go on chanting, make others also people. Make others also to chant. Because Prakashananda Saraswati had asked this question, that you are a sannyasi, you should be reading Vedanta. Isn't it? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that yes, you are saying that I should be reading Vedanta. But this is the essence of the Vedanta. That is what Vedanta Sutra says. Isn't it? So, in this age of Kali Yuga, it is very difficult to come to a conclusion of understanding through Vedanta, that means through Jnana, or through Yoga. The ultimate process of all these different yoga systems is finally to come to the point of worshipping the Supreme Lord. That is what we are seeing. And even in the 6th chapter, Krishna explains that Yoginam api sarvesham, out of all the yogis, who is the supermost? Madgatantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yoma, who with faith is always rendering devotional service unto me. So we can understand that actually that is the whole goal of yoga process, isn't it? So, whatever we are finding, Prabhupada very nicely explaining in this purpose, is very much practical, and it is not something which Prabhupada is saying, it is not that it was invented by Lord Chaitanya. You see, Prabhupada is saying here, Lord Chaitanya, what was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Because that is what is mentioned here also. That finally, the whole goal of yoga system is what we are finding. After this again we will find how one should meditate, fix his mind. Now here is the beginning. He is explaining that yes, by fixing one's mind, one will become free from the 3 modes of material nature. Now Lord Kapila is going to explain on what one should fix his mind upon. Should he fix his mind on some kind of, some point or some impersonal? Lord Kapila will be describing the form of the Lord, beginning from the lotus feet of the Lord, where one should start meditating and fixing his mind upon. Even saying that for a long time one should fix his mind on the lotus feet before going up. You see. So this we find there is a parallel to all these things in the Bhakti Yoga. Which is more easier? Fixing and contemplating a form in your heart, in your mind. That is one way. Because there are many authorized forms of the Lord. There are many elements by which the form of the Lord can be made. One form which the yogi practices is by his mind. It is said, one can, according to the scripture as it is described, one can contemplate and make a form of the Supreme Lord in his mind. That is also there, but it is very difficult. Whereas the form of the Lord as Archa avatar in the temple, it is very easy. So even samadhi, what is practiced, or dhyana, fixing his mind on the different limbs of the Lord in his mind, what yogi is doing, that also parallel is there in Bhakti Yoga. We come to the temple and we have the look at the lotus feet of the Lord, what the Lord is wearing, what different ornaments the Lord is wearing. Then we look at the thighs of the Lord, waist of the Lord. Slowly we go, we rise up to the lotus face of the Lord. So we can find that parallel is there. And that this is more simple. It is very easy. Even a common man, one does not require to be a yogi to concentrate on the form of the Lord. Even common man can come and he can fix his mind on the form of the Lord. That is why Jiva Goswami advised that these two processes should go on parallelly, Sankirtana and deity worship. Very quickly the devotees can advance. Even though Sankirtana itself is enough for this age of Kali, that is Yuga Dharma. But Jiva Goswami, the Acharyas have pointed out, to quickly advance, it is better to perform Sankirtana, and if that can be done in the front of the deities, that is far better. So we'll stop with this Granth Raj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki